learned a lot about myself in the sense that you can't, you develop a lot as a person being on your own anytime, but when you're on your own in another country with another language, working with people who have different cultural understandings, you learn a lot about your own habits and things that you struggle with yourself trying to get through, where your frustrations come in, which is really nice to learn about. I also learned a lot about the idea of doing international development and how it's really important to think seriously about when you do it, because a lot of times it can be just as harmful to the community as it isn't. So you really have to be careful about what you're doing, who you're doing it with, and really think about whether or not it'll actually harm the community more than help. I had this very stereotypical African image of what it was going to be like, and it wasn't like that at all, which I think is the biggest thing I learned.
That generalized education is great, but it's important to have a particular idea, something that you yourself are good at and can contribute to others. I also learned how important it is to do work in your own cultural context. I mean, I went to Ghana, and that was an amazing experience, but I also learned that it's important to do work in my own backyard and spend some time in Canada doing development here because we need it too.
The biggest thing that I learned was just how to live in a new culture that I knew nothing about, and how to live in that culture without, say, family members that I've always had, because, even at school when I get stressed out, I can call my mom and I can talk to her about that, but not having that support there helped me learn how to deal with those things.
The longer I was there, the less I knew. But more than that, I think it's a mutual learning experience for both sides. I had the opportunity to learn a ton about the Indonesian culture, and my Indonesian community learned a lot from me, I think. And so I learned that being overseas doesn't always involve a huge element of serving. It just involves being in the culture, being present, and being willing to absorb what you're learning.
How to balance, how much do you judge a culture, and how do you not judge the culture, but then at what point do you say, okay, this is what I don't agree with, and how do you balance those two conflicting ideas?
In terms of goal setting, time went so slow in terms of getting things done, and that was something that I expected, but I didn't expect it to the level that it was when I got there and when we started working. I was able to improve my Spanish a lot throughout that time, especially living with a host family and then also going to work every day and dealing and working with people. I realized that I would really like to work with communities more, and this idea of community dynamics and how we can work together as a community to create a better community, if that makes sense.
My entire experience is very valuable because of a lot of ups and downs and some conflicts, some issues that we had to deal with through the directors, the board of directors, through the teachers, just kind of like mediating between groups and making sure everybody's on the same track. Goals would probably be the same, just kind of keeping everybody on the same playing field of why we're there, but also what we're going to bring and how it kind of involves them at the same time, because we're kind of coming into their area as well.
I think the most important thing was solidifying my own knowledge. I was it was exhilarating being I actually know what I'm talking about.
Just being able to communicate with the people around me was a challenge. So I was able to learn how to try and ask for things that I needed. I could go into town and ask for some, say, buy bananas or buy some food, and I could do that kind of thing. But I could never really have an in-depth conversation other than with the people that spoke English.
3 months seems like a long time, but it is not a long time. You need to see results, you need to be there for at least a year, I think.
Really shocked by coming back, and I was worried about the reentry, but I didn't have too many issues with reentering. I was just like the first time I had a warm shower, it was oh my gosh, this is incredible. When I was able to finally use the tap and get tap water, it was great. But then looking around, and the weird thing was that when I left, before I left being in Canada, I was like, okay, this is the way things are. But coming back, now I had this new experience. So when I looked at a house and I saw how the way people lived, I would just be like, okay, well, this is different than over there. And it was just weird constantly comparing everything I do here to how I did it back in the Dominican Republic. Not that it was hard to adjust to, it was just like, okay, so this is how we do it, this is how they do it. And then looking at everything through a different lens was slightly surprising.
It's not that I had these expectations of it being this grand experience where everything would be awesome and perfect. I definitely wasn't expecting it to go that way. I think I had a really realistic idea of what things were going to be like. But coming back, I almost feel guilty to say, like, you know, it wasn't this grand experience, because I feel like other people are expecting me to say that it's this grand experience.